I'm going to interview Dr. Dean Kyne at Arizona State University, the Tempe campus. Dr. Kyne is a recent graduate from a PhD program in environmental social science, the School of Human Evolution and Social Change at Arizona State University. Dr. Kyne conducted a doctoral research study on environmental justice issues in communities hosting U.S. nuclear power plants. His dissertation research study is said to be a detailed and path-breaking study of environmental justice issues of civilian nuclear power plants in the U.S. Thank you for being here and being a part of this interview.
You're welcome, Kelly. Thanks for your nice introduction.
Can you tell me an overview of your doctoral dissertation research study?
All right. My study is a longitudinal environmental justice studies which focuses on environmental justice issues in hosting communities of U.S. nuclear power plants. My study includes 3 decade time periods, namely 1990, 2000, and 2010. The study focuses on host communities in which 104 nuclear reactors were located in 65 nuclear power plant sites nationwide. Here, host communities are defined as areas within a 50-mile radius from a nuclear power plant. Non-host communities are outlying areas outside host communities in the state where the nuclear power plants are located. In my study, first, I attempt to search for any particular group which disproportionately shoulder the burdens of potential risks associated with the nuclear power plants. To do so, I look at disparities in socioeconomic characteristics between host and non-host communities. Second, I also examine if proximity of the nuclear power plants are associated with the minority population groups. Third, I construct the nuclear power plant's potential risk index. In abbreviation, I call it NPPPRI, and identify 4 discrete risk levels. Then I examine socioeconomic characteristics of at-risk populations that expose to different levels of potential risks. Finally, I conducted a simulated nuclear disaster at Palo Verde nuclear power plant and searched for association between projected exposure to radioactive emissions and the demographic of the downwind populations.
Can you tell me about some of your findings, generally?
All right, thank you. There were 82 million people in 1990, 91 million people in 2000, and 96 million people in 2010 who live within the host communities. In other words, I could say 32% of total population, or 3 out of 10 persons, live in the host communities within a 50-mile radius of a nuclear power plant in 2010. Findings indicate that there were disproportionate numbers of minorities living in the host communities. These disparities increased during the study periods from 1990 to 2000 and 2000 to 2010.
Your simulated nuclear disaster at Arizona's Palo Verde site is very interesting, and I think it's really important for people to, hear about this, especially in Phoenix or Arizona. So, can you tell me about your findings that are particularly related to the surrounding communities in the valley here?
I used the Palo Verde nuclear power plant as a subject to stimulate a coal meltdown accident. So this is the worst disaster in the nuclear power plant that could happen anytime. So I utilized a computer program, namely Rascal 4.3, to estimate the dispersion of the resultant radioactive flume. That software is also used by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to assess the impact area at the Fukushima disaster site, and the U.S. federal governments at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission gave the technical expertise and advice to the Japanese counterpart government during the Fukushima disaster period. So that is a very good computer software. So I use that computer software to estimate the plume dispersion. However, one thing we have to know is that this is just an estimation. The real plume dispersion will be totally dependent on the weather conditions on the day that event takes place. So I'm taking 4 typifying weather conditions in quarter 1, January to March, quarter 2, April to June, quarter 3, July to September, and quarter 4, October to December. With the 4 typifying weather conditions, I estimated 4 resultant radioactive plume parts in exported populations. Then I explain any association that exists between projected exposure to radioactive emissions and the demographics of the populations under the radioactive plume footpaths. What I found was that more than half of the total population in Arizona could expose to the resulting radioactive plume under the meteorological conditions typifying quarter 3, July to September, or the autumn. The population include a higher percent of color, person black, person Hispanic, person Asian, person living below the federal poverty line, person living in owner-occupied housing units, and population density then compared to surrounding census tracts that would not be in projected part of the radioactive plume. And I have other information, but this is the worst scenario that I could present to you if anything happened at the Palo Verde site.
Is any organization or agency applying your research to confront these injustices created by the nuclear power plants and the nuclear energy industry in Arizona or just generally?
It's a good question, Haley. I really don't know which organizations, agencies, or individuals are using my research to confront the nuclear power injustice, because they do not require my permission to use my research findings. As you know, all the doctoral dissertation research studies are published for the public use, and my doctoral research study is available in the library, which is accessible to all stakeholders involved in this nuclear power.
That's great.
Therefore, I anticipate that those organizations which are responsible for enforcing environmental justice, such as Environmental Protection Agency (EPA) and Nuclear Regulatory Commission (NRC), might find my study informative. Similarly, those stakeholders who do not wish to see any risks associated with the nuclear power might find my findings useful to confront with the responsible authorities. In addition, I have been preparing a few manuscripts out of my dissertation findings in order to publish them in peer-reviewed journals, so more dissemination of my findings.
Great.
Yes.
In your opinion, how do you think we can collectively, and this is, a vague question, but how do you think we can collectively move forward to overcome issues or these injustices created by nuclear power plants or the nuclear industry?
Yes, it is a very good question, even though it is vague, but it is a very good question. But in my opinion, first, I think that information is the key to awareness of the potential risks associated with the nuclear power plants. When general public is provided with the factual information regarding potential risks associated with the nuclear power plants, they will become aware of the risks. Thus, organizations like yours could play a very important role in providing the information as well as educating the public. Second, when public is aware of the potential risks and dangers associated with the nuclear power plants, they could make their own decision on how they would like to deal with it. At a national level, there were movements you can see that inform the public of general danger associated with the nuclear power. At a local level, there were movements that opposed the use of nuclear power plants. For example, San Onofre plants in California. Due to the local pressure, the plants was finally shut down last year. So that is a good example that this is a good case study that how local participation is important in order to deal with the local problem. So I think, as I said, that when you provide the factual information, then the public became aware and they will participate more, and they will express, what they would like to deal with, whether to shut down or whatever actions, their authorities need to take. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dean Kyne, and congratulations to you on recently receiving your PhD.
You're